All right, it's time to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, up and running, and much to get to today. We'll talk about some of the signings the Kansas City Chiefs have made. Charles Omenihu came down last week when we were doing the podcast. We'll get into him a little bit more. Drue Tranquill, linebacker from the Chargers. Mike Edwards, safety from the Bucs. Now members of the Chiefs. How do they fit into that Chiefs defense? Do the Chiefs finally pay a cornerback? Is L'Jarious Sneed going to get the big payday? Why should they? Why shouldn't they pay him? What's the level of concern at right tackle now that it appears Jawaan Taylor, much to my chagrin, is actually going to be the left tackle? Anybody want to talk Laramie Tunsil? I don't know. We can if you want. Still no wide receivers. What's your level of concern right there as they're starting to get a little bit picked over now on the free agent market? And what should the plan be for the backup quarterback? We're still talking veteran. Are we looking for a young up-and-coming player? What should the plan be for the Chiefs when it comes to whoever is going to hold the clipboard for Patrick Mahomes? We talk about it right now here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, parking lot. Gann Asphalt and Concrete is now hiring for all positions: project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members. Starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience, with paid time off and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. Check out GannAsphalt.com for more info. Now, here are the hosts of the best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
And welcome back to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the free agent edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, as we are now knee-deep into free agency. The Chiefs starting to stick their toe in the water at least a little bit. We know Jawaan Taylor was the big signing. Talked a lot about that last week, so if you are looking for Jawaan Taylor breakdown, check out last week's podcast. If you're new to it, remember, if you're catching us via the podcast, you can always be a part of the conversation. Tuesdays we're settling in 8 p.m. Central. This is now back-to-back weeks. Eric Eager has demanded we go earlier, and whatever the data scientist wants, the data scientist, we know, Jeff, how it works in our world. Let's start with the defensive signings. What are you thinking about how the Kansas City Chiefs are working so far in free agency on the defensive side of the ball?
They're being smart about it. You're looking at guys who are fairly cost-effective. I like all three of these guys, to be honest with you. I mean, I think Omenihu is a bigger body than what you've seen on that side, and that spot on the defensive line. Tranquill is a very active linebacker. I was a big fan of his with the Chargers, a really good blitzer, pretty good in coverage. And then Mike Edwards is a guy who's also a guy who can play in the box, a guy who can play on the back end, the deep safety, and can also stick his nose in there. So I think if you're looking for a word to describe all these guys, it's versatility. You've added a lot more pieces to Steve Spagnuolo's chessboard that he can move around, put in different spots. And, a guy like Tranquill, you do wonder, even though it's a one-year deal, what does this mean for someone like Willie Gay? Mike Edwards seems more like depth in that three safety look they like to use a lot because they have Brian Cook and they have Justin Reed. And then Omenihu obviously has the best chance to have a big impact just because there's a spot that's open on the defensive line. But I think all three bring something to the table, and I would say all three are pretty good moves.
Yeah. Eric, do you want to, first of all, take a shot at me since I took a shot at you in the open, and then we can get into the defensive signings, or are you ready to let bygones be?
No, in fact, I'm going to use the one swear word. You used it last time. We're on a one. And people don't know this because you wear your emotions far less on your sleeve on the show. the distribution of swear words off air is more uniform than it is on air, much more tilted towards me on air. But the Omenihu one is really what makes or breaks this class, right? When you look last season, if you look at something called true pass sets, and this is something I created when I was a PFF, basically take away screens, take away play action plays. Basically, when a pass rusher is like one-on-one with a tackle, right? Charles Omenihu was 8th in the NFL last year in total pressures generated. He won 25% of those plays, which is one of the better marks in all of football. 25% was better than guys like Max Crosby, guys like Matthew Judon, Trey Hendrickson. Like he put up really good numbers, and this is like an example of when you think about back. You look at guys like Pernell McPhee when he was with Baltimore. You look at guys, where they're like a super sub rusher and they go to their next team. Shaq Barrett was this way, right? Shaq Barrett was great in Denver, but was behind Shane Ray and Von Miller. He goes to Tampa Bay, gets a chance to start, has 19 and a half sacks his first year there. Like, when you are a team like the Chiefs that never gets to pick that high, Charles Omenihu, these are the kind of gambles you have to make, right? And I think that they made a very reasoned gamble here with Omenihu. Now, when you think the other side of it is, okay, well, Samson Ebukam had almost as much production, on that same defensive line. So did Nick Bosa. They had great secondary play with guys like Charvarius Ward and Fred Warner and guys like that. So it's easy to get to the passer if you're on one of those defenses. So can he come over here and be the best defensive end on the team? But I think that's the reason why. If he blows up and is a starting caliber defensive end at this price, like, the Chiefs win. Like, this is absolutely nothing else in free agency matters. So to me, that's the takeaway I have.
I don't even think he's here to be a starting defensive end. I think he's here to be like a hybrid. I think this is just continuation of Steve Spagnuolo taking this defensive line to where he wants to go. I mean, he's 6'5", he's 280. He's kind of a tweener size, but that's Spagnuolo likes a lot of defensive ends out there, right? That's what he does. The guy who didn't look like one of his guys was Colin Saunders, right? He likes long, tall, angular guys, and that's what Omenihu is. So he certainly fits the profile of what the MO is on the defensive coordinator. So that Steve Spagnuolo is on board with this selection because he looks at it, and I can see him sliding up and down the line. I mean, Andy Reid really likes those versatile offensive linemen as well, and I don't think there's a lot of difference. I think they recognize what you are when you come out of training camp or go into training camp healthy is not what you're going to be at the end of the year. And Jeff, having flexibility, you talked about the versatility. I mean, if you look at the linebacker grades on Tranquill, he comes in right below Willie Gay. Willie Gay's the number 32 linebacker. Tranquill's number 37. I mean, this gives them depth and flexibility. So when you lose a guy along the way, you're still an effective team at the end. Is that what this is about? More so just, not trying to build the perfect 22, but trying to be ready for when you've lost 6 guys and the playoffs roll around.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And again, I think Tranquill's a better player than Willie Gay. I mean, I think the numbers would bear that out and the productivity. I mean, just watching the two guys play.
Not according to Eric's old company. They say Willie Gay's 5 whole spots better.
Is that right? Okay. Well, I feel like Tranquill did a lot of things in that Chargers defense that I like to see linebackers do. But again, I think it's nice to have that mix at a bargain price. I mean, he's at a 1-year deal, right? So it's not like you're investing a lot of money in the guy. But I think he's the kind of guy, if he plays well for you, you may want to see if he wants to stick around for a couple more years and let Willie Gay go. I think him and Omenihu, I think the one thing I wanted to say about Omenihu that I'll back you on that point is that there aren't many guys his size who put up big sack numbers in this league. Most guys are going to be in that 6'4", 250, 260-pound range. So I think it is more of a move around type player. But I think this defense is evolving. And that is what makes it, what gives it great potential. It's what gave it great potential last year, what I liked about it. You've got a lot of athletic players at different spots who are smart and who are young and who are capable. And so, again, Mike Edwards is part of that mix too. I mean, he really showed up in big moments of big games, which I think you want to see from safeties that you're bringing in to play that position. So I think all three of those guys can make big plays for you.
Yeah. You the depth piece, Eric. I mean, is that a part of the equation? That you
I don't think Tranquill's brought in for depth. All that I could be wrong. But you look at Willie Gay in his career: 269 snaps, 554 snaps, 737 snaps. Missed 4 games last year with a suspension. Missed 4 games the previous year with an injury. Kind of didn't miss the playoffs as a rookie with an injury. Even when he does play, I like Willie Gay as a player. I think, he had a pressure in every single playoff game. He had an important sack early against the Bengals. He can make plays in coverage. I think he is a really good sideline to sideline player. He complements Nick Bolton a lot because Nick Bolton isn't the most athletic guy in the world, but he's also going to be on the field all the time with the green dot and all that kind of stuff. So I think Willie Gay complements him on early downs, but he's never been a guy. Chiefs have never played him every down. He comes out the Chiefs play 20, and this is Mike Edwards' point as well. They play 24% of their snaps in 6 defensive backs. So, Willie Gay has not necessarily been all that reliable, and the Chiefs are just they're just spreading the risk out, right? They're not even necessarily they don't have that many holes roster-wise, right? So Tranquill's coming in to kind of pad a middle of the defense in case Willie Gay gets injured. They also, by the way, were bad at special teams until the last 2 games of the season last year. So bringing in linebackers, I mean, you remember that it was Elijah Lee that was practice squad elevation, practice squad elevate. They didn't have kind of veteran players to play special teams last year. So he also is in that sort of frame of reference as well. I like it. I like the Edwards signing too. Like I said, Brian Cook was really not very good last year, and we all laud him for the great play he made on the interception of Burrow, but he was terrible the whole game before then. And so you think about it, okay, do you want to go into next season saying Justin Reed, big free agent signing, and Brian Cook, 3rd round pick, are 2 starting safeties? But you might as well, given how depressed that market has been, by the way. I mean, the fact is, the Chiefs, from what I can tell, were surprised that Juan Thornhill only got $7 million APY. They were expecting a bigger number there for Juan. And one of the reasons why they just kind of let him go is they assumed it was going to be more. And, Mike Edwards being a former starter in this league and catching 3.5, that's a bargain. And so when the marketplace gives you that, you got to get a guy with starting experience to at least be your number 3 safety.
Well, I think that's part of the Tranquill signing as well. I would buy that Tranquill's the replacement for Willie Gay if he'd signed for more than 1 year, right? It's 1 year. So that's the part I think it was this guy's still sitting out there and we can keep him away from the Chargers. He's just too good to pass up. It's not a need, right? We're going to talk about some of the things that clearly are more needs. I think this is just them, one, maneuvering around the board. I also think, when you convert part of Patrick Mahomes' deal, I think this is a little bit of Brett Veach not being able to hold his water on a trade up, right? It's really? You're going to leave this guy out there? God, it wasn't part of the plan. It doesn't fit with the math. Well, we'll convert part of Mahomes' deal, right? Instead of the whole thing, we'll convert part of it, and we're going to go add these guys, which I think is, I'm fine. I think certainly with Tranquill, I think you're getting a player that's going to play and play very well. And maybe it means Willie Gay. Maybe it means you can use more starters on special teams because you feel like you've got the depth. And if you would lose somebody there, hey, we're still pretty good in that situation. Is this, Jeff, the time that the Chiefs finally pay L'Jarious Sneed? Doesn't have to be done today. Probably wouldn't get done until right before or at the beginning of training camp if it is going to get done. But do they finally go ahead and pay a cornerback, even though they haven't really up until now?
If you'd asked me that question at this point last year, I would have said yes, because I like Sneed and, he brings a lot to this defense. You got 2 long corners you drafted, last year who are going to be in their 2nd year. You got Trent McDuffie, who you drafted in the 1st round. I'm starting to feel like he may not be here after this year. And that's not a knock on him. I think his price tag is going to be pretty substantial. I don't know if they want to be in the business of franchising cornerbacks, which is a pretty costly thing to do. And I think that they feel comfortable enough with what they have on the back end to say, this is a team that's always going to invest more money in offense. I think we can all agree on that. They're going to spend a lot of money. It's going to be on that side of the ball. And really the only guy they've ever paid who's still around here, who the homegrown product is Chris Jones, who's still here. And so I think it's only because they've been forced to pay him. He's played so well. I think right now that L'Jarious Sneed, given that, if he's taking a bargain deal, if he's taking, say, I don't know, $11 million a year or something like that, APY, then he could do it. But I think his agent's probably going to say, you've got a pretty good skill set. I don't see them franchising you. If you walk out in the open market, look at what Charvarius Ward got. You're a better player than Charvarius Ward, and you could be in the $15 million a year range as a corner. I think he doesn't get done. I think he's going to walk.
Okay, Eric,
I'm in a little bit of a disagreement for a couple of reasons. Like, I think walking on Rashad Fenton midseason in a trade was kind of Fenton was a homegrown guy, and he was veteran depth for this team. And when they looked at the group of 4 guys they let Fenton go, and that was a little risky, right? Given who they had at the time. They got lucky that only one of those guys was hurt down the stretch, Sneed at times, right? And so I think that they're still probably – I don't think they're going to trade him. And I do think that there are some people who think that they're going to trade him right now. I think they're just going to let him play out his deal. But I do think there's a better than average shot because of the way, some people might view him, right? So the way that he plays is inside guy, blitzer guy, some elements of a safety. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson just went for 1 year, $8 million to the Lions. Jeff, your Lions, $6.5 million guaranteed. A guy who, CJ Gardner-Johnson, did he lead the league in interceptions last year? Despite being, he was one of the leaders, right? And they're a little bit different, right? Because CJ is more of an inside guy that played safety. Yeah. L'Jarious had some inside-outside stuff. But I do think one of the more depressed markets in the entire NFL are inside defensive backs. And so while Charvarius Ward was given, 3 years, 42 by the Niners, Charvarius Ward's an outside corner, through and through, thick and thin. Whereas I think maybe the league views Sneed as a better inside player than an outside player, even though the Chiefs did play him outside a lot this year with McDuffie in the slot. So I see it both ways, but I do think that there are some forces that might keep him in Kansas City beyond this year.
By the way, the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, serving the entire KC metro area. Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in KC since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project, it comes with a written warranty. Find them online right now at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. I get it. Sneed kind of strikes me as he's going to be one of two things. He's going to go someplace else and they're going to put him out. They're going to make him a lockdown guy and he's going to blow up. Or we're going to find that the Chiefs used him exactly right. They never exposed him too many times to one spot. They moved him. He's one of those guys that's going to leave for a big money deal and 2 years later be released and signing back in Kansas City. That's what he kind of has the feel to me, right? But I do think they're positioning themselves. Jeff, you mentioned the spending. 120 million on offense this year, 71 million on defense. I mean, that's and it hasn't been that way, to be clear. Yeah. It was just recently flipped with Mahomes' deal going up. That's really the thing, is that they had been spending more on defense, even though they had, you would say, more talent on offense. But now that's flipped around, and it might be time to try to start spending on a little bit of the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, it might. And again, I think the point we're making here is that if you're Brett Veach, you're sitting here trying to figure out what do you pay this guy, the way we're talking about him, it's going to be a lower number than what I think L'Jarious Sneed would want. And so there's always two sides of this kind of stuff. And if you're the player, you're always thinking, well, this guy in the open market is getting this. So if I get out there as a free agent, maybe I can always come back. And I don't think he's going to be looked at as a CJ Gardner-Johnson type player because he doesn't play safety. He might end up being a safety, but right now he's a corner. And corners look out there and say, this is Orlando Brown did. Hey, there's a lot of money being made here in this position. So why would I lock myself up into a team that, while I've enjoyed being here and winning, if they're not paying me what I think is market value, I got to go see what's out there. And so that's why I think they won't get into the business of franchising, because it's not worth it, because he's not worth that number. But I think he's going to want to go out there and see what's available to him.
And let's see what the draft brings. If the draft would bring them some corner that they love and it falls into their lap, maybe Sneed does start making the transition back to safety. They've got Edwards back there now that they've signed. And as you mentioned, last year addressing the position in the draft, we'll see where they go. Where should the level of concern be at right tackle? Where is it for you, Eric? I'm giving up the dream. Somebody I put up here in the chat room, if you listen to the podcast, the chat room, somebody said 5% chance still on Laramie Tunsil. Even I will finally throw up my hands and go, I don't think it's happening. Although I wanted to claim that, they're signing Tranquill because they're going to move one of the linebackers in a deal for Tunsil. I wanted to believe that. I don't think that's the case. But how big a concern is right tackle now when you look at it, Eric?
There's a concern there. I mean, I think, we talked about this last year where, in 2021, you needed to find 4 different guys, right, to start. And now you're stuck having one guy to start. I think, by the way, I would sell the idea that they're 100% on Taylor playing left tackle. That I think that they're allowing the draft to play out. Like right now, if I'm looking at the offensive line, I'm saying there is one question mark, but there are potential answers to that question mark in drafting a left tackle somewhere early, right, and moving Jawaan Taylor to right tackle, drafting a right tackle, or some combination of earmuffs Petro, Darian Kennard, Lucas Niang, Prince Tegawahonu, butcher the name, but I'm among Petro, who is among friends in butchering names.
Yes, that's right.
And all those options. So if I need one of 5 options to work, I like my odds, right? Like that's kind of where I'm at with the right tackle / left tackle, right? Like if a left tackle falls to them that they really like I think they're going to do it. And I think they're going to move Taylor over at some point in time. That to me is plain. And then they have, young guys who, like everybody's like, oh, can Lucas Niang do it? It's like, well, let's find out. Like, I think that don't make it your only gamble, but let it be one among a bunch of choices that you have at the position.
Nick says, will Yang show up under 400 pounds?
Guys, a patella tendon injury is no joke, right? The fact that he was able to make it back in a calendar year and play, I know he didn't play, but he was I reject that. I think it shows a decent amount of gumption on Lucas Niang's part. A patella tendon injury is that'll mess you up.
Well, I talk about him being a left tackle at one point. Wasn't there some discussion about that?
He played some left tackle at TCU, and there was some talk that because he was a first team All Big 12 player and everything. Early on, it quickly seemed to go away. Obviously, when they got Orlando Brown, it went by the wayside pretty quick. When we heard Orlando Brown talk about his undying passion to play left tackle, and it seemed like the Make-A-Wish Foundation was in effect and going to make sure that happened. By the way, the butchering of names, I don't know that I butcher names as much.
You just forget the first name?
I just don't get them right.
Your pronunciations are perfect. They're just wrong, like the wrong name.
Yeah.
Right. JJ Redick's a Pro Bowl Hall of Fame defensive end.
That's right. That's right. You know what I do.
By the way, JJ Redick, respect with him on the DraftKings commercials now. He's really gone to the dark side there. Love that for him.
Yeah, that's big. Tell me, listen.
By the way, DraftKings, we're going to sponsor the show. Come get us.
Yeah, there you go. There it is. FanDuel. We'll listen. Bring it on. Tell me, by the way, Darian Kennard is not going to be the starting right tackle. I know that was just to take a shot at me, but you get people in the chat room going,
I wasn't taking a shot at you. I was just saying.
You're just trying to get me worked up. He's never going to start a tackle for this team, ever. It will not happen.
He might be 400 pounds.
Unless 4 guys go down in one game, all tackles, then maybe he'll go in a tackle. Maybe. Okay? It's okay. You don't have to go 11 for 11 on a draft class. All right? You can have one that you swung and missed on. But it does look like it's going to be in-house and the draft. We all expect him to take a tackle somewhere in this draft, right, Jeff?
Yeah, they have to. I mean, I think for obvious reasons. I think Jawaan Taylor is going to end up being the starting left tackle. And this is no disrespect to Lucas Niang. Eric made a great point about the injury. I feel like when you've waited this long for a guy to be available to you, he's not going to be your guy. And Kennard may be something. He may be a guard for all we know, but it just feels like they'll find a way to make it work. Andy Heck's done a pretty good job, their offensive line coach, of finding ways to get the most out of players. We sat here at this time last year and bemoaned the idea of Andrew Wiley starting at right tackle, and he found a way to make it work and found some money in free agency as a result of that. So I don't think it's the worst possible thing. Your quarterback has proven that that he's willing to play within the offense more and not be as free-willing, which helps you scheme up the offensive line a lot better. And look, I don't think at some point you have to draft somebody at those positions and develop them. And so I think this is the year where you do it.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I agree with what Eric said about Taylor eventually. I think the plan is to sign him, play him now. Maybe something falls out of the sky. Maybe they draft a guy, they get him into camp, and go, oh my God, this guy's a left tackle. Let's get him over there. And they move Taylor over to the right. I think somewhere probably next year they want to get Jawaan Taylor over to the right side and probably walk on the contract of the left guard, Joe Thuney. It would be my assumption would be the plan for them if everything goes right. But they got to find that guy that can push Jawaan Taylor over to the right side. If not, I think they feel like they've got a comparable guy at tackle. How about the wideout position, Eric? Receivers keep coming off the board. Trades. Brandon Cooks goes to the Cowboys. We've seen a number of wideouts signed. Do you get concerned that they haven't made a move at wide receiver yet?
I mean, I'm vehemently against going after Hopkins because I don't think that it makes a ton of sense for this team to kind of, and DJ Chark is a guy who has kind of the same profile as MVS, right? So it's a kind of a redundant position, all that kind of so there doesn't appear to be in free agency this great fit, right? Odell could be one, but I don't think he's healthy. I don't think that the Chiefs really want to back up the truck.
Terry is not giving it up. He has been honest about DeAndre Hopkins, and now he's like, the Chiefs get Hopkins and OBJ, Odell Beckham.
I could be look. I'm saying this right now. I've been wrong before. I could be wrong here. I'm 90% certain they're not getting Hopkins.
He doesn't,
at least not in a trade.
Yeah,
at least not in a trade.
Yeah, not for anything expensive, right? He doesn't. They like young guys, but if you were to look at a veteran that they might go, this guy looks like a guy we like, doesn't he? Look like a guy that Andy Reid would like. I mean, not just. I mean, he's a possession guy, but the way he talked about Juju being opposite Travis Kelce, and I'm with you. I don't think they're getting Hopkins. I also don't think they're getting Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah. But here's a stat that I brought up. Contested target rates for some players over the last 2 years. Hopkins at 23.2% is 26th among players with 100 or more targets. The next highest Chief was Marquez Valdez-Scantling at 16.9, which is 75th. So 50 spots lower. Then it was Juju at 13.8, which is 91st. Kelce was 12.1, which is 100. DeMarcus Robinson, who played for the Chiefs, 11.8, 102. And Hardman at 10.2, which is 107. They don't prefer contested target players. And Mahomes doesn't throw to contested guys. They don't have they don't have it play enough possessions to waste targets. That's the whole the frustration with Valdez-Scantling with you throw him a 50-50 ball and it's we just wasted it down throwing a 50-50 ball to a guy for whom it's 20-80, right? And with Hopkins, when it's truly 50-50, it still sucks. It's still a bad pass for Patrick Mahomes because he's a 70% completion guy. So it doesn't make sense to have DeAndre Hopkins on this team.
But Jeff, how much does the contested catch? And I agree, he's a guy that basically just wins on the fact that he'll go fight for the ball. And Andy Reid doesn't want to do that. He feels like he'll scheme you open. But if you were playing for Andy Reid, would there maybe be less contested catches? Would he maybe be more open if he had Andy Reid scheming for him?
I don't think it's about that. I think it's about the value that you're getting. And do you want to, I think you have to look at, you're looking for somebody to replace the production you got from Juju, which was 70 catches, 900 yards. That's what
78 for 933, I believe.
Yeah. So are you going to pay $33 million over 2 years for that? I don't think that that's great value. Nor do I think that Odell Beckham is the kind of player who's going to come in here and just play on a 1-year deal for $6 million. like he's going to want a lot of money. This is his last big contract. So when people get excited, I get why people get excited about those two names, because they are big names and they're accomplished players and they've had a ton of success in this league, but it just financially doesn't make sense. Because what's that?
DeAndre Hopkins' average depth of target last year was 10.7 yards. He averaged 11.2 yards per catch. His yak per catch has gone from 4.5 yards in 2020, 3.3 yards in 2021, 2.8 yards last year. Like, this is just not a Chiefs wide receiver. And I know he's great, but it's just different. And to Jeff's point, I think Jeff makes a great point about Odell. Like, the reason a guy like Valdez-Scantling is useful for this team is that he can go 1 for 6, 6 for 110, and 0 for 0, and have the and basically not say a word in any of those things, right? Like, you need wide receivers with low self-esteem on this team, because it's just the ball's going different places, right? And it could be your day one day, and it couldn't. But Odell has pissed off every team he's been on except for the Rams. He was on the Rams for 6 weeks because he can't get the ball, and not every game. And there's going to be games where he's going to go 1 for 8, and he's going to throw. Tyreek was talking on his podcast about how the Chiefs didn't love him anymore when the guy got 180 targets. Like, this is why we and people talk. Tyreek's a fabulous player, but there's a reason why they took out A, inserted B, C, and D, and they got better as an offense, because they're allowed to, when they have to be more flexible, and players like that don't allow for them to have flexibility. Now, to answer your initial point, Petro, the thing I'm worried about for this team is that they do appear to be going into the season with Kadarius Toney as wide receiver 1, and Kadarius Toney's hamstrings are a privilege. So I do think that wide receiver has to be a number 1. Wide receiver has to be a 3 draft pick draft for the Chiefs this year.
Yeah.
It just
I want to see him run a route. I see him run a route. I've never seen the guy run a route.
That's been my point. Listen. I will say this: like, worst case scenario, I do appreciate that the Chiefs are not wetting themselves because of the fear of the unknown, right? So many teams make bad signings because they're like, but what if we don't have anybody? Like, there'll be somebody. Like, Demarcus Robinson is out there. The worst thing you had to do was just go back to Demarcus Robinson and deal with his shenanigans, but not off the field, but I mean, just on the field. It's okay, right? Like, it's okay. But like, we know they like young guys. How about a 25-year-old wide receiver with elite speed? If I could find you a 25-year-old wide receiver with elite speed, do you think that they would be all ears? Do you?
Just had one.
Yeah. And he's still out there. That's what I'm getting at.
Right.
Cole Hardman's still out there,
yeah.
right? He's a possibility. But I'll give you some other guys. How about Guyton with the Chargers? He's 25, 26 years old. He's still out there. Who's the guy? Who's the Saints guy? Marquez Callaway.
Yeah, I mean,
is 24 years old. Like, take a shot, bring him in, and coach a guy up if he's got tools. I mean, I definitely think they're going to do something. I definitely think they're going to get at least 1, if not 2, veteran wide receivers, and I definitely think they're going to throw a couple of draft picks at it.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think it's got to be draft picks, right? And we know, I think people, the draft is a great place when you're in that 31 range, because when you look at the history of the draft post CBA, basically, if you're drafting from 12 to 32 in the draft, your hit rate on wide receivers is about as good as 33 to 64.
Yes.
So when you think about, hey, could it, like, let's say it gets to 31, right? Or it gets to 28 or something, and they don't see a tackle they like or an edge they like, right? Because that to me, that's the 2 draft picks that they might do before wide receiver. And they're like, okay, well, you get out of Dodge and you get in the second round, you get a couple picks, and you take 1 or 2 on the wide receiver position. And this is a different, and I think I want people to recognize this, because this is if we're not going to learn from the Chiefs winning Super Bowls in a smart way, what are we doing here? And the NFL used to be about 2 wide receivers playing every single snap of every single game, and then some little guy coming in and playing third down. That's how the NFL used to be. And so wide receiver draft picks were horrendous gambles, because the guys that were brought in had to be everything. You had to be the jam inside. You had to be the jam outside. You had to run the whole route tree. And nowadays, teams mix and match wide receivers so much. If you look at the snap counts, like none of these guys play the full 1,200 snaps a wide receiver. And so if you are smart about it, you can draft half a wide receiver and platoon him with another half of a wide receiver and get that production in the aggregate. That's how teams are crushing the position now. And it's why second round picks and third round picks in the NFL, mostly second, are doing really well, because the expectation when they come into the league is not to be this alpha, it's to be a contributor, and they contribute really well early on. Whereas when you draft guys high, like a Henry Ruggs or, some of these early Jalen Reagor, guys like that, it's like those guys are expected to be everything, everywhere, all at once, to quote the movie. And only Justin Jefferson is the guy that can do that right now. And that's based on historical rates. So let the Chiefs kind of build that receiving core piece by piece by using guys, between pick 31 and like 70, as opposed to being like, oh, we got to go up and get our guy.
Jeff, you were going to say something there for a
No.
second.
I was just nodding in agreement. I think that's exactly how they should look at it. I mean, given the history of Andy Reid's offense, given what Sky Moore was in his offense last year, when you take a young receiver, there's going to be an adjustment period. So my only concern is they don't have an option. Juju was an optimal option last year because he needed a place to go to rebrand himself. He had put up big numbers. You knew what he could be. He was a willing participant in this kind of an offense. I just think that there's nobody out there right now who's in that age range who is jumping out at me to say, okay, that's the guy you got to have.
Yeah, no doubt. By the way, we're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. If you want to be a part of one of Kansas City's fastest growing companies, you can do it. They're hiring all positions, including project managers, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members, starting pay up to $30 per hour based upon experience. Paid time off, insurance. Those are just a couple of the benefits you can enjoy working at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Check out more information at GannAsphalt.com. The backup quarterback position, Jeff. Where do they go with that? Buechele, I'm not even going to take a shot at whether it's Steve or Shane. I don't remember what it is. But Buechele, we'll stick with last names. Jeopardy scores count if just the last name is given. Buechele is on the roster, but do they look for a guy that they can nurture and maybe develop, and maybe one day has to play a couple of games and then they can spin him for picks, an old Andy Reid trick from back in the day? Or are they looking for the new version of Chad Henne, a veteran guy to be cerebral on the sidelines and maybe just manage the game if they have to go to him?
It's a gray area they're in right now in terms of that position, because you look at what the backup quarterback has meant to this team in the last few years. They probably don't have 2 rings without the backup quarterback, right? Without Matt Moore, without Chad Henne in certain situations, coming in and playing in playoff games and playing during the regular season. Matt Moore, that is, a few years ago. And so I'm more inclined to go with a veteran, a low-cost veteran. I don't know who that is right now, but I still think you're not in a place where you need to go full mode. Let's get a young guy and develop that kind of player. Because to be honest with you, most times when you see that happening with veteran quarterbacks who are stars, they end up going the young route because the stars don't like having somebody who can really threaten them. It's more of a, quiet as a cat. Peyton Manning was that way in Indy. Matt Ryan was that way in Atlanta. Ben Roethlisberger is that way. None of these guys like to have anybody around who can actually take their job if push came to shove. Even no matter how big they were. I don't think Mahomes is wired that way. I think he likes having someone like a Chad Henne around. And so as long as it's cost effective, I'd go with the vet.
Eric?
I mean, Teddy Bridgewater is the obvious choice right now in free agency. He's had a decent career, right? I think if he doesn't get hurt in Minnesota, only God knows what they do with that team that went to the NFC title game a year later with Sam Bradford and Case Keenum. Like, I think Bridgewater is kind of on his way. He is certainly good enough to win half the games if he's starting with a good team. And I think that's the line you have to draw with a backup quarterback. It's probably in that $4 million range, which, especially given that other guys have kind of gone before him, maybe it's even cheaper. I don't know. But Teddy always seems like a good locker room guy. Players loved him in Minnesota. Players have loved him kind of everywhere. Very limited. but this offense is trending more towards a yards after the catch kind of check down kind of offense. And that's the quarterback. That's the arm strength kind of guy he is. He has some mobility, which you always want in your backup. That would be my choice. Because this is a team where Mahomes gets nicked up a lot. He doesn't he doesn't tear an ACL or anything, but he gets nicked up and the guy's got to start a game or two or play a series or two. That's the kind of guy you want, right? Is you don't want a backup where, to quote, Tommy in there with you're effed if this guy has to play. No, there have been, as Jeff said, classic situations where no one wins. Although, if anybody can rehabilitate him, it is Andy Reid. Remember how Andy Reid resuscitated Nick Foles once?
First of all, stop with the no on Wentz. Absolutely on Wentz. High pedigree, played well under Doug Peterson. Absolutely on Wentz. If he'll play for your price.
Is he going to get picked on in the locker room? Because he is kind of lame, right?
I don't know.
But anyway, you do need somebody in there. You do need a veteran. I agree with Jeff. And that's a long-winded answer to the question.
Yeah, it's stunning. Here we go. Here's the answer. John has it. Cam Newton.
There you go.
Cam Newton's making a comeback.
Maybe Newton can finally get a ring. I'd love for Cam Newton to get a ring.
The answer is Cam Newton, right? He won't take it. He's going to want to be a starter. And he's like guys like Kevin Durant now. And they'd rather start and LeBron at this point. He wants to win a championship as long as he can get his 38-8, right? That means not bringing in somebody better than him who's going to outshine him. Is Cam Newton ready to be outshined? Because he could be a valuable piece of a championship just by being the short yardage guy for the Kansas City Chiefs. If his shoulders are healthy, if he can actually run the ball, I think he's my dream scenario. I've wanted him for a couple of years. I listen, you ready? Let's end with this. 2 words for you. Perfect backup quarterback. You ready?
Go ahead.
Do either one of you see it coming?
The perfect, who's available right now?
It's available right now. And maybe only Andy Reid and Brett Beach could pull it off.
I got it.
Lay it on me.
Zach Wilson.
No, God, no. Rot in hell with that asinine comment. No.
Mr. Trubisky.
Nope. You ready? Colin Kaepernick.
No. He's 45 now.
No, he's not. No, he's not. Yeah. He can run the ball, do the short yardage stuff, knock the rust off. Who brought back Mike Vick?
No.
Andy Reid did. And on that note, we close. We'll talk more about Cam Newton on our Too Deep podcast. That's coming up if you catch us via the podcast. We do stream live Tuesdays. We go back-to-back with both our Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, this one about the Chiefs, and our NFL podcast, It's Too Deep. Both of them brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater KC area. They are nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they are problems no more. When you call Gann Asphalt and Concrete, find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, my name is Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.